Meanwhile, some Republican lawmakers are pushing back against Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's crackdown on how the Pentagon communicates with Congress. A new policy instructs all Pentagon personnel, except for the Inspector General's office, to seek approval before they communicate with any lawmakers or congressional staff on Capitol Hill. Some Republicans yesterday voiced concerns about that decision.
We have Senate-confirmed nominees that I dare say would be reluctant to confirm if our access to accurate information from the Department of Defense was inhibited in any way. I think Secretary Hegseth knows that.
We're a democratic society where, first off, he's got an organization. You got to trust your chain of command. This is too large of an organization to have that kind of a tight clamp on it, particularly when we have members that want specific answers, not going through protocol. So that's number one. But I think generally, this sort of closing the discussion to the press, limiting how many people can act independently in their capacity, very senior capacities in the DOD, just doesn't make sense to me. It underlines a lack of trust in the organization that I don't think is good for senior management to project.
Well, and again, John Heilemann, the funding comes from those people. Those people fund Pete Hegseth. Those people fund his salary, fund his staff's salary, funds the Pentagon, funds everything. And you know, I don't have to go back to when I was in Congress. I can talk about 10 years ago. If you were sitting on the Armed Services Committee, like I sat on the Armed Services Committee way back, my God. Let me tell you, any Secretary of Defense that said that, like, they'd be called in front of that committee or to do what we used to do. You would just freeze spending in a certain area where said SecDef would feel the pain. So, I mean, yes, this is stupid for the Article 2 branch to be trying to do this Article 1 branch. It's just pathetic, though, that all they can do is go out and talk in front of microphones instead of actually taking real action. Hopefully, they're being very blunt behind the record. But this is sort of an upside-down world where you've got the Article 2 branch telling the Article 1 branch who they can talk to and who they can't talk to.
Well, you know, Joe, it's only about the 900th way in which we live in upside down world, bizarro world with respect to the relationship between the Article 2 and the Article 1 branch since the beginning of Trump's second term. You know, I'm with you. You know, all I can say is kind of like baby steps. You know, can we take some hope? Because in the fact that at least there are a few members of the Senate, Republicans in the Senate, who are speaking out on some of these issues, because really for the first 10 months of Trump 2.0, there was nothing. There was no action, and there was no talk. There was just total abdication of the Article 1 responsibilities, prerogatives, and authorities. And so now we're seeing whether it, you know, was on this Trump nominee Ingrassia the other day. We saw some pushback where that nomination had to be pulled because of the fact that he was obviously, on the basis of what was found out about him, unqualified for the job that he was being appointed to. We're seeing a little bit of this now on this question of Pete Hegseth. But, you know, you make the correct point, which is we're encouraged to see a little bit of talk, but it will really only get serious when there is some action. I do think that there are Republicans on the Hill who are particularly offended by Pete Hegseth doing some of these things. I think some of those Republicans who voted to confirm him regret their votes now. And the last thing I'll say is I want to loop this back to the previous topic, which is, of all of the topics we've talked about today, where some congressional oversight seems to me essential, is, and Rand Paul agrees with me about this, is on the question of the strikes against these Venezuelan fast boats, because that we're taking the lives with no evidence whatsoever, no congressional consultation whatsoever, let alone congressional authority. We are saying that we're now at war over drugs here. Well, if we're at war, time to start talking about the War Powers Act, because right now all of this is happening. Civilian strikes killing civilians on an almost daily basis now, with no evidence, as I said, no evidence, no consultation, and no authorization. I can't believe that the Article 1 body is going to allow that to go on for very much longer. And if it does, it's a huge mistake.
And of course, the vast majority of those drugs are coming from China, which would open an entirely new front there. Let's go back to the Pentagon, David, just for a minute, because of your vast experience as a reporter in this policy. First of all, we have the relationship with Congress, where now Pete Hegseth and the defense secretary is saying there will be no unauthorized engagements with Congress, which is there to oversee the Pentagon, but also with the press now. Staged this walkout over the policy. They wouldn't sign the document. Most organizations wouldn't, including ours here at MSNBC. And yesterday, the Pentagon sort of announced what it called the next generation of Pentagon press corps, including Lindell TV, run by the MyPillow guy, organizations like that. What are the implications for the way this Pentagon is covered from the press side, but also how oversight is carried out by Congress?
My concern is that some of the lowest moments in American history have been when there is a concentration of power and secrecy. And that's what's sort of evolving in the Pentagon. And it's extraordinary. These are lawmakers with security clearances. These are lawmakers that back in the 70s uncovered, some of the worst abuses under, Hoover and other parts of the government. So I'm surprised what's happening. And then in terms of the new reporters who've signed on to this, I mean, the vast majority of the press, including Fox News, has not agreed to this because this is our responsibility. And I just think these are sending young Americans out to fight and die for this country. And pesky reporters, I've been on military embeds, but, there's a role for us to be there to make sure that these young soldiers and airmen and sailors are being properly led and supported and trained.